Welcome everybody to the Unauthorized Supplier Robomod training. My name is Brennan Conaway. I am in the Office of Policy and Compliance. I am in, we just reorganized. I'm in the Acquisition Policy Division, Branch B. Joining me is Denise Alley, also from OPC in the Acquisition Policy Division, Branch A, which focuses on schedule-related policy. And fun fact, Denise was my first contracting officer when I started at GSA, so it's always a thrill to work with her. Also joining us is Josh Royko, Catalog Management Office, the CMO. I asked Josh what his title was. He said he doesn't know, LOL. They're like restructuring. He's basically the data branch chief. But he said we could call him the lead data janitor on this call. So I think that's informally what we'll go with. But no, Josh is he's the VPP guy, knows everything about data associated with FAST, in my mind at least. So looking forward to this call. In terms of an agenda, let's see, can I advance slides? Yes, there we go. So the whole purpose of this training is to raise awareness about a Robomod that we're kicking off later this month to remove unauthorized products from scheduled contracts in GSA Advantage, and to ensure that you guys, the especially impacted contracting officers, specialists, ACOs, and IOAs, know what we're doing, know the process, how to handle any contractor questions, know the key milestones, and can access any available resources. So to that end, our agenda for the day, we will provide some background and context about why we're doing this, basically what is the problem set that we're trying to solve. And so to do that, we'll have our lead data janitor, Josh Royko, give an overview of the VPP, and Denise will go into the implementing policy. And both of these have had lots of communications and training. So this will be very brief and a refresher and really kind of context driven for what we're doing with the Robomod. And then we will get into the Robomod itself. So really just hitting up the objectives that we're trying to accomplish. Really the process is the main focus of what we'll be going over here, as well as some resources. And then we will definitely have time for question and answer. I think we'll have plenty of time. So if you want to send questions in, I think we'll wait until the end. We'll give our presentation and then we'll address questions rather than stopping as we go. So I think that's it. So with that, I'm going to advance the slide and Josh can give us some background on the VPP.
Thanks, Brennan. Appreciate it. As Brennan mentioned, I'm Josh Royko. I'm in the Catalog Management Office working on all things data. Excited to share a little bit about VPP. It's the first piece of core catalog management architecture that's come online. It's allowing us to do some really cool stuff in partnership with manufacturers and large national wholesalers for commercial off-the-shelf products. Pertaining to the Robomod, we work on supplier authorization data with manufacturers who maintain a supplier authorization program. So they essentially give us a list of their product catalog along with all of their authorized suppliers and sometimes some expressly unauthorized suppliers. And in the event that a contractor is offering the item on a GSA schedule or GSA contract appearing on GSA Advantage, but they're not appearing on that manufacturer's list, we flag it as unauthorized. It also allows us to do some really cool stuff around product enrichment, getting photos from the manufacturer. Later in Q4, we're hoping to have videos and product 360s on GSA Advantage directly from the manufacturer. We also have PDF files. And just last week, we launched stock disruption indicators. So when a product goes end of life or is discontinued, we can communicate that information to buyers so they can find available stock and make sure they check with the contractor they're thinking of ordering from. Additionally, it lets us handle product prohibition rules and flag items that are non-TA compliant. In terms of supplier authorization status, it's really important because when a contractor isn't authorized and a manufacturer maintains a supplier authorization program, there's a high risk that the item could be counterfeit, it could be fraudulent, it could be refurbished or used, or it could be something that's intended for sale in another market where the manufacturer may not offer warranty protection or may not honor that warranty because it wasn't sold through an authorized source. So it helps us promote fair competition, ensuring that everyone is selling the same authentic product. And it strengthens the federal supply chain and ensures that we do not have counterfeit items being distributed in the marketplace. Gives our customers confidence to make a purchase knowing that they're going to get an authentic product. For new offers and modifications, the acquisition workforce can access VPP data by running a 4P report. We also have an internal dashboard at the manufacturer level. Highly recommend running a 4P report because that will give you item level information. Let's go on to the next slide and we'll talk about how items get flagged. So again, VPP manufacturers are submitting authorization information for each individual item. So we know specifically which items a supplier is authorized to sell. In many cases, manufacturers that are larger and have multiple categories maintain numerous authorization programs. And so just because you can sell one class of products doesn't mean you can sell the entire product line. So this is at the individual item level tied to distinct contractors. So if the contractor is offering a product that's not listed or is prohibited, we're able to throw a flag to start this Robomod process. Next slide. So just a little bit of background in terms of what we're seeing across the marketplace. You can see since we started flagging unauthorized products, really this is representative more of us capturing a more holistic view of GSA Advantage as we're scaling out VPP. But you can see a significant increase of nearly tenfold, going to about 118,000 items as of the December 1st catalog. When planning out this Robomod, we wanted to find a way to test it out and really ensure that we're working most efficiently. So what we decided to do was target the top 25% of contractors by number of items flagged. And that allows us to get over 115,000 of the 118,000 and change items, or 97%. So really with 25% of the contractors receiving this Robomod, we're able to address 97% of the problems so that we can work a little bit more efficiently, test it out, make sure everything's working well. And we really do think that it's unlikely that there will be successful challenges because there's really only one way that a contractor can challenge and be successful, and that's if the VPP data is just out of date. So if a manufacturer hasn't added them as authorized, and they really are. So that's really what we're going to be confirming as they get through the challenge process. But to tell you a little bit more about how the Robomod is going to work and cover some of the policy, I will turn it over to Denise Alley.
All right, thanks, Josh. Good afternoon. We wanted to be sure to include today just a quick refresher on the policy and clause that we have in place that allows us to do an unauthorized supplier Robomod in the first place. You may remember in the spring of last year, it all started with the PAP reference here. On May 4th, we published PAP 2021-01, Modernizing Supplier Authorization through Implementation of the Verified Products Portal. And by the way, once we provide you with a copy of today's presentation, you can link directly to the PAP here in this slide, but you can always find all of our PAPs and other policy guidance and training in the FAS Acquisition Policy Library on the Acquisition Gateway. And then speaking of training, OPC partnered with the CMO to provide training for the workforce back on May 12th with a webinar that included a live demo of the VPP by Josh, and then also a comprehensive overview of this PAP provided by me. You can link directly to this training webinar here in this slide, but for future reference, it's also posted on the training materials page in the FAS Acquisition Policy Library. Now, today, I'm going to keep things very high level and specific to the unauthorized supplier Robomod, but you can always check out our original webinar if you're looking for more detailed information on the underlying policy and the clause behind it. So what this policy effectively did was to officially make the VPP our authoritative source for supplier authorization data. That means that whatever the VPP says about a contractor's supplier authorization status takes precedence over all other sources of this information, to include any existing letters of supply that we may have in our contract files. In this policy, we provide detailed guidance and procedures for the workforce to make sure that vendors are complying with our requirements related to supplier authorization and an uninterrupted source of supply, not just at time of award, but throughout the life of the schedule contract. And if at any time we become aware that a vendor is not authorized to sell a particular product, we are required to remove it. That is true whether we become aware of it prior to award, while evaluating a modification request or exercising an option period, or because of a Robomod initiative like this one to specifically identify unauthorized suppliers. So for new offers, we added language in our SCP instructions that makes them aware of the VPP and our supplier authorization requirements. But we needed a clause that gave us the clear authority to enforce these requirements post-award throughout the life of the scheduled contract. So what we did last year was we took our existing IFSS 644 clause that you probably remember as the dealers and suppliers clause, and we reworked it into the clause that you see here, now known as products offered and sold by vendors other than the manufacturer. You can link directly to the full text of this clause on this slide or the previous slide, but this here is basically what it says and what it does for us in plain language. IFSS 644 prohibits our scheduled contractors from offering or selling products if they are unauthorized. Now, we're not saying that every single contractor has to be explicitly authorized by the manufacturer, because we know that not every manufacturer even has a supplier authorization or controlled distribution program in the first place. What this clause is saying is that if the manufacturer has a supplier authorization program, the contractor has to be a part of it. And then if they don't, say in cases where the manufacturer has an open distribution policy, if the manufacturer has called out a contractor as being prohibited from selling a product, that contractor is considered unauthorized for our purposes and is not allowed to sell that product on their scheduled contract. The next part here is essentially the teeth of the clause, and it tells our contractors how GSA will enforce these requirements in our scheduled contracts post-award. It says that if GSA becomes aware that a contractor is not authorized to sell a particular product, just like we've done with the unauthorized suppliers we've identified for this Robomod, we're required to give the contractor written notice and 30 days to respond. And then if the contractor fails to respond or to resolve the supplier authorization issue within this time frame, GSA has the authority to remove the unauthorized product using the cancellation clause. Now, we really tried to build this Robomod process in a way that minimizes the chance that contractors will come to you with their questions. You're going to hear more about that in just a minute. But beyond that, though, SAS launched a pretty extensive communications effort last year to get the word out to industry about the VPP and these new supplier authorization requirements. And then we also highlighted it and provided information in our advance notice of the solicitation refresh back for refresh 6, and then again in the mass mods that went out to all of our existing contractors. But as you know, that does not guarantee that all of our contractors actually took notice of this change or fully recognized the potential impact on their scheduled contract. There is a chance this Robomod initiative might come as a very unwelcome surprise to them, and they could potentially reach out to you asking what the heck they agreed to and when. So please do revisit the PAP, the clause in the webinar if you need to refresh your memory. And then if you have any questions about the policy or the clause, please feel free to reach out to me at the OPC policy mailbox. I snuck the address into the bottom right corner of this slide here. It's OPC policy mailbox at gsa.gov. And then I would be more than happy to clarify anything that you need to know. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Brennan, who will get into the details of the Robomod itself. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Denise. So, thanks, Josh and Denise, I should say. So we've covered the background in terms of the VPP, the problem set with unauthorized suppliers, the number of products and contracts we were seeing. We're taking kind of an 80-20 approach. It's really a, 95-25 approach. And we're doing it in accordance with our policy and the clause in terms of written notice and 30 days for disputes. So I'm going to jump into the Robomod itself to really talk about the process. Before I do so, let's just remind ourselves of what the objectives are, which primarily what we're trying to do is remove the unauthorized products from scheduled contracts and GSA Advantage. So both of those are critical. And by doing so, we reduce customer risk of purchasing fraudulent, counterfeit, or otherwise illegitimate items. We promote fair competition. We strengthen the supply chain and increase customer confidence. So all of those are kind of downstream of this action that we're taking. However, we also do have secondary objectives, which is about how we go about it, like what the process is. The whole point of these Robomods really are to minimize the burden to, I have the COs and specialists listed, but also IOAs and ACOs as well. We want to do this in a way that minimizes the touch points to you guys, so you can be freed up to do those higher value acquisition activities like price negotiation and things like that. And we do this by leveraging the data analytics that Josh kind of showed and alluded to, using automated acquisition processes and centralizing the communication process. So that's really the Robomod itself. Like all of those things are why we do the Robomod. It basically allows FAST to remove non-compliant products from a bunch of different scheduled contracts out, a bunch of different COs and specialists have applications and issuing them separately. So it's really just, a huge time saver by using the Robomod process. I don't know who coined the phrase Robomod. It's not referring to a robotic process, if you're wondering. I think that's might be the assumption based on the name, which is definitely reasonable. It's not a bot. I don't really even know what a bot is. I kind of do, but not really. But it does, I think it might even be referring to RoboCop, and it's just like a beefed up mod. Anyway, it's done for years, and I think most of the on this call I recognize have been involved. So I think the first one was for addressing Ability One, essentially the same items. GSS kicked that off years ago. Basically, Ability One was finding all these non-compliant products on a bunch of different contracts. So approach and streamlined processes took those down and has been repeated on an ongoing basis. And I think in 2019, we started 2 other Robomods. The first, I think the first out the door may have been the Made in America Robomod, which that one's tough because the goal is to get the contractor to correct their country of origin from US to whatever the correct one is, or we've also learned through that process to delete the items if we find they're TA non-compliant. And then the third Robomod that we have on that's run on a quarterly. I'm going to check my, hold on a sec. I got something about my network. Sorry, can someone confirm that you can hear me? I'm concerned. I saw something.
Yeah, you're back.
We can hear you, but you're cutting in and out.
Okay. How far did I, how far back should I go?
Oh no, Brendan, it just started when you started talking about the third.
Okay. Sorry about that. If that happens, instead of chatting me, just someone let me. Anyway, I'll keep proceeding. So we have the third Robomod, which is addressing Section 889 and Kaspersky items. And just to point out the effectiveness that we've seen for these Robomods, this shows the progress we've made since we started the prohibited products Robomod. We were originally finding about 3,000 items at the start of the process. Those are products that have a prohibited keyword in them. And through this process, we've got it down where we're consistently in the low hundreds, and this number might go up soon. We're actually expanding. We're continuing to add things so that, if it goes up, it might be more reflective of just, widening the scope of what we're doing. But anyway, Robomods work, and it's a good solution set to this problem. So let's jump into the step-by-step process for this particular Robomod. You can see at the bottom of the slide, we kind of have the milestones. So I'll go through each of those steps one by one. They're all pretty much applicable to all of the Robomods, with pretty much all the same with some slight twists here. So the first step, the Robomod in our mind really kicks off when we email impacted contractors and let them know what we're doing. So in this case, we will reach out to them with an email that includes the list of the unauthorized products that we're flagging. The email will basically say something along the lines of that it's come to our attention that you're not authorized by the manufacturer to sell these items on your mass contract. We're using data from the verified products portal, which is our authoritative source of information. We'll cite the clause, and we'll let them know if they want to dispute any of the items, how to do that and by when, which I'll talk about more detail later. And we'll also point them to training and some other resources. So that's scheduled to go out on January 25th, which by my calculation is a week from now. COs and the rest of the contracting team will be given, well, first of all, you'll be CC'd on that email to the contractor. Just so everyone knows what's going on. In terms of who it goes on the contractor side, we've learned that the best way to do that is to send it to every email we have on file. So that's the contact for contract administration in all the authorized negotiators. We've learned from other Robomods that a lot of times those folks are gone. We don't want to just send it to one email address because they may have left and the contractor hasn't updated their info. So we tend to send it to everyone that we have on file. I should mention before this goes out, we will send up what we call a heads up email to the COs and the rest of the contracting team, formally notifying like, hey, we're going to reach out to your contractor. They're part of this Robomod. I know we've kind of done that a little bit through this training, but we'll formally give you notice that we're going to reach out and start this process. So that's step one. Step two is vendor action. So as Denise pointed out in the clause, there's three elements to that, the piece of the clause that has teeth in terms of providing them written notice, which is what we do in step one, giving them 30 days to dispute the accuracy of the supplier authorization information. So in this phase, they'll have 30 days to kind of digest what we're sending them, and if they want to dispute the fact that their products are unauthorized or claim that they've been flagged, then they can do so. They have 30 days to submit a dispute. We will be pointing them to the catalog management office at that, or their inbox at least. They'll be jointly monitored by the CMO and OPC teams. The way that'll work is we will provide them with an Excel spreadsheet of the products that we flagged. So the spreadsheet will have instructions, very detailed on when to send it back, how to do it, which fields we need completed, etc. And then the other tab will actually have the list of products line by line with certain fields like manufacturer, probably manufacturing part number, unit of issue, things like that. And then a column which will basically let them say yes or no if they dispute for that particular item. So they can dispute one item or all of them or a subset. So it's a line item level dispute option. Let me see, where am I here? As part of that email, we are letting them know that there are 2 training sessions that will be held for them. So if they have questions or want to learn more about it, the CMO is graciously hosting 2 sessions where they'll meet with any of the impacted contractors. One on January 27th, which is pretty soon after the email goes out, and then a follow-on a couple weeks later. So I think this is the first time in a Robomod where this has happened, and we think this is a pretty good opportunity for getting the contractors up to speed on what's going on, and hopefully we'll take a lot of the questions away from any of the contracting staff and over to the CMO and any OPC participants. So that will be listed, and they will be encouraged to participate. Yeah, okay, so let's move on. That's step 2, the vendor action 30-day period. Denise mentioned this about contractor questions. Generally, when they have a question about their authorization status, that's really between them and the manufacturer, right? I think the clause even speaks to that. If they have an issue with their authorization status, that's between them and the manufacturer. However, as part of this Robomod process, since we're initiating this, if you do get a question from the contractor, answer the question if you know the answer. A lot of it might be, information you're receiving as part of this training, or as Denise said, through that policy or clause, if you refamiliarize yourself, answer any questions you have or that you know the answer to. Second, you can direct them to those training sessions. Hopefully that's going to answer the bulk of those questions, assuming the question comes in before those training sessions occur. That's the best path forward. And then finally, if there's something that comes up and you can't answer the question, you may refer them to the CMO at this inbox, and we'll be happy to help out. So the third step is basically the review of all the disputes, which the catalog management office will be leading this step. So they'll basically receive any of these files submitted by the vendors with the disputes and go through that data and figure out which manufacturers have a product that are being disputed and kind of organize that on a manufacturer by manufacturer basis. Then they're going to meet directly with the manufacturers and walk through that information. So, basically manufacturer A will say, hey, we've had, you have a couple, 3 contractors that claim they're authorized, but, they're not in the VPP. Are they correct? As Josh said, we don't think in many cases that that's going to be a valid dispute. I think Josh mentioned that Really, timeliness might be the only thing we're expecting might happen. But again, this is a pilot. This is the first time we're doing it, so we do definitely keeping the door open to things we didn't anticipate. But the good news is by working directly with the manufacturers, they can work through any of those issues. And if they flag something that might be like an ongoing problem that needs addressing, then we can do it. So yeah, manufacturers may need to validate the authorization status of multiple contractors. So at the end of that discussion process, what will happen is, in most cases, we think the manufacturer will indicate that the supplier is not authorized. And if that's the case, then the Robomod process will continue and the products will be deleted. If the manufacturer does come back and say, oh, wow, yeah, this dispute is actually valid for whatever reason, they are authorized, then we will take them out of the Robomod process and the products will not be deleted. Step 4, this is after the CMO review and dispute resolution process, we will reach out to impacted contracting officers and share the findings of basically those conversations with the manufacturers. So OPC will reach out via email and say, hey, we met with the manufacturer about these disputes. The manufacturer said these contractors are not authorized. Therefore, we intend to proceed with the Robomod. The other path would be, hey, we reached out to the manufacturer. They said the products are authorized, so we're not going to Robomod them. We'll let you know. One key piece about this that's different than other Robomods, we haven't done this before, is that we're not requesting CO authorization to delete the products. That's going to be it's going to be more of an opt-out approach. So instead of sending you like a survey that says, hey, we want to delete these products, we're going to move forward. Can you please fill out this Google survey saying yes or no? Instead, the default is that we are going to move forward and delete the products unless the CO opts out of the Robomod. So basically, they'll opt out. If for whatever reason a CO doesn't want us to issue the Robomod, then they can go ahead and there'll be a Google form attached in a lot of our communications to you where you can say, I don't want you to do this, and we won't, because ultimately authority to issue a modification does rest with the CO. However, this is different in that we have not done this opt-out approach before, but that's what we're going to do. And the reason we're doing it is really, one of those secondary objectives we have about minimizing CO burden. We found that we've had to, for some folks, we've had to, I think it just gets buried in inboxes and we have to email them and email center directors and say, hey, we're trying to get this prohibited product off, but we're not getting a response. And it adds time to the process. So we've confirmed with legal counsel that we are authorized to take an opt-out approach as long as we communicate it up front and communicate it thoroughly to the CO and they know what's going on. So generally, we don't think there's many reasons to opt out of that Robomod. Again, if we meet with the manufacturer and they say that a contractor is authorized, we're just going to pull that out ourselves. So outside of that, we're not really sure if there's a really valid reason for a CO to opt out other than that, right? So, but again, this is a pilot, so, and ultimately COs do have the authority to issue modifications, so we do have that as an option. One thing, I think Denise actually already touched on this during her comments. This is what we think might happen a lot is that COs may be contacted by the contractor with a letter of supply. This isn't a good reason to opt out of the Robomod because the VPP is the authoritative source of authorization and takes precedence over letters of supply. So really, in terms of opting out, I think wait until you see what happens after we discuss with the manufacturers before you decide to opt out. And then finally, this is the same process for all Robomods. This is where the Robomod itself actually kind of gets issued. OPC, once we have the list of contracts and products that we're looking to remove, we'll coordinate all that and compile them and get the data we need to provide to GSA IT, who issues the SF30s, the modification to delete the products. We basically tell them certain fields on the SF30, some of which can be changed, some can't. Some of them are kind of locked in. But then we develop the content for page 2 and beyond, if it's more than 2 pages of a modification. Those pages list the products that are going to be deleted, and they also cite the authority and some background about why the products are being deleted. So in this case, we will cite as authority IFSS 644, which Denise walked through, as well as GSAR 552.238-79 cancellation. The cancellation clause states that either party for a scheduled contract can give 30 days notice to cancel the contract in whole or in part, which for the Robomod, we cancel the contract in part. So that's why that's cited as an authority. There's been some questions about that in the past, but that's the rationale for using that as an authority. And so once those SF30s are issued by GSA IT, they're automatically filed in the ECF. Then the next step is to coordinate with OSM to actually remove the products from GSA Advantage. Unfortunately, it's not the same request, it's 2 different ones. So we basically tell them what we want removed, and they find it and pull it down. But it's not, we do the SF30 first and then pull it from Advantage right after. So that is the overview of the process itself. This is a summary slide. So I just go through it really quick. The vendor notification starts in late January. So we'll send out that email on January 25th, CC the contracting team. They'll have 30 days. So in late February, that's when the action will have to be taken, where they can dispute the accuracy of the supplier authorization. That would be February 24th if we're on schedule. CMO reviews. Right now, I think they're allotting about 15 days to have that review and coordination process with the manufacturers. And yes, and then moving on to CO notification. Later in March, CO. So then we'll reach out to COs. They'll have we'll tell them what happened with that discussion with the manufacturers. If for whatever reason they want to opt out, they have 5 days to do so. Otherwise, OPC and CMO will proceed with the Robomod, and that should occur in early April, where we would actually work with GSAIT to issue the SF30s and pull the items down from Advantage. So if we don't have any delays, then we're looking at a resolution of this in early April. That puts us at roughly, what is that, a 3-month, a little less than 3 months. I don't want to count. Let's see, January, February, March. Yeah, less than 3. But of course, this is a pilot, so that we don't know. Sometimes things do occur and milestones do get pushed back. So if that happens, we will communicate accordingly, probably just through existing regular fast meetings that we have to let folks know, we're back a week or 2 if needed. Otherwise, just wait for direct communication from us. So again, one thing I do want to re-clarify here is this opt-out thing. That's really something that should occur after you hear back from us in mid-March, and under that CO notification milestone. After we've talked to the manufacturers, let you know what's happened with the dispute. We will have provided you with that Google form to opt out earlier than that, but you should really just hold off until we see what happens through the dispute process. reminder, I think we've covered most of this in terms of the contractors. They're going to have more resources, I think, than contractors have ever had through Robomod. They'll be able to dispute the authorization information, 30 days to return disputes to the catalog management office. We'll have 2 training sessions, which will be provided to them through the initial email. And then they will be able to submit questions directly to the catalog management office if needed. Just another reminder at the bottom of this slide is, the fact that there is that interplay between the vendors and the manufacturers with this, where really the authorization status is something that they're supposed to work out directly with the manufacturers. So I think it's FAQ time. Real quick, I guess, reminder on internal resources, and we need to update this slide now because we do have an acquisition gateway page up that we put up last week. So I'll make that change before we share this PowerPoint out after the training. For support during the process, there's the link that you can send it to. It's the catalog management office, but folks from OPC are involved as well. We have a standing weekly meeting where we're working on this, and that will continue through the process. We also have this workforce FAQ, which you can access if you have specific questions. There's probably a lot of good information in there that we didn't really touch on today, so I encourage you to look at that as well.